Hello and welcome to the Animation Essay Podcast. I'm your host, Julia Smuts Louw, and this month I'm delighted to be talking to the mighty Esther Pearl, having earned her spurs in the Pixar story department on titles such as Monsters, Inc., WALL-E, and The Incredibles. Esther spent some years giving back to the industry in the form of her training body, Camp Real Stories.
What I was able to piece together, which we now know is fact, is a lack of representation behind the scenes has a direct effect to the representation on the screen. And when you're in rooms like I was, where all of these really brilliant men who have a very limited worldview are making decisions about films that are going to be seen by sometimes upwards of 1 billion people, they're not thinking about their storytelling choices that they're making that continue to replicate the same problems that we have in our society.
We are now very lucky to count Esther as a resident of Cape Town, from where she offers story and pre-production consulting through her new company, Nell Productions. We talked about women empowering women in the industry, one of my favorite subjects, and as you'll soon see, the driving passion in Esther's life. Please enjoy. Do you want to maybe start at the beginning? You were born in Santa Cruz and lived between there and Melbourne for your childhood.
Yeah, that is true.
And what were the kind of formative influences that landed you where you ended up?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I think that it's important to state that I had no entry into the film or video world in any way, because I do think that is something that a lot of people face, that like, oh, I don't know anybody in this industry and how do I make my way in? I did not know anybody in this industry and I made my way in. So I grew up, I was born in Santa Cruz. We moved every other year between Santa Cruz, California, and Melbourne, Australia. My parents were educators and activists. I did not have a television growing up. They did not want us influenced by media in any way, shape, or form. So I really don't have any early influences in media in a lot of ways.
Where did that come from? Was that like a Steiner thing or a Quaker thing? It was a Steiner thing. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So we built our own. I mean, they are not with us anymore, so they can't defend themselves. They would say that they were not Steiner because they believed deeply in public education and access to education for all, and they felt that the Waldorf system could be unavailable to lots of people because there's a cost available to it. But I think for sure that is who they were influenced by when I think about my childhood, in the fact that, you know, they built our own house. It was all made of natural materials. My sister and I really didn't have any plastic toys. I should also say they came from a very eclectic family. My mother was a former Catholic nun. My father is a political rabble-rouser. They met when she had left the convent. She was one of the largest exodus of the Catholic Church in 1969 when the nuns were demoted. The Order of the Immaculate Heart in Los Angeles was a teaching order, and they all left the church on the same day.
They became rebel nuns.
They became rebel nuns.
Which is like a Tarantino movie waiting to happen.
There is a documentary about them. It was like, it's actually like, it was a labor rights situation. So that's a whole nother story. So I was raised with these sort of deep roots around social justice and activism and equality. So I think the natural rebellion to that is to go into media. But when I think back on it, it was also that I was raised around amazing storytellers, right? They all were always telling stories about their lives growing up, and both of them were, my father was a child of immigrants. My mother was, I think, second generation American. And I saw how storytelling could be utilized to be a great humanitizer at a very young age. I mean, I was surrounded by people who were making really intentional choices to live lives that would help other people and uplift them. And so one of the ways to do that is like through political activism, which is a form of storytelling, to tell and paint a picture for a different type of future that we want. And it was only when I was 16 and I worked in a Democratic consulting firm in Washington, D.C., and making commercials that I was like, oh, and you can amplify this, right? You can take this sort of living room storytelling, or what's the right word, like a rally storytelling where you're speaking to people in real time, and through the media you can actually amplify those stories to a much larger, wider swath of society.
You're like, Dad, this TV thing is actually quite effective for politics.
And also, like, in hindsight, we must have had television because
they just hide it from
because my father was super into sports, and I know but So I think it only worked when they wanted it to work, and
it reminds me of a story I heard about a mum who convinced her kid that Fortnite turns off globally at 11 p.m.
I mean, we got to do what we got to do as parents. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about being creative parents, is that we can make our parenting very creative. We should, as we are trying to raise our children, also find some enjoyment in it.
It's a nice word for lying.
Yeah, totally. Whatever it takes. Yes.
So from there, what was the kind of pivot into animation? You spent some years in VFX.
Yeah, so I got my undergraduate degree in film with a emphasis on what was then new technology, because I was at UC San Diego, which is one of the UCs in the United States, and we had a supercomputer, which of course is like
a cell phone now.
Yeah.
Less than.
Yeah. And so I was getting this opportunity. It was a very small film department to kind of play with early effects there. And then I did additional certificate course in animation in FAMU in Prague, the film school in Prague. So, so I was getting the opportunity to learn at Barrandov Studios. And so that was also really influential, where I saw how animation was used in Czechoslovakia before the split as a way of getting around the censors, right? So the censorship boards were not looking at animation because they thought it was just kids' films. And so it was really subversive and really dark and cool, and this children's media had this like underlying messaging to it, and I was like, this is all very interesting ways of doing storytelling. And I really just thought, and most of my friends were in bands, I was very into like the music scene, so I just really thought my career path was going to be like just doing visuals for folks touring. That's all I wanted to do. Wow. I've literally
Did you do some of that?
No, I've never done it. So I would love to get that opportunity at some point. But like I, worked with, a lot of my friends were like in industrial and punk bands, and I wanted to do I maybe did a little bit of it while I was at college, but I really wanted to do that in a big way. But I didn't. I never have. And so I got my first job in LA when I got back from Prague, and it was in a small visual effects company in Los Angeles that's been bought and sold 1 million times since then, but at the time it was called Pacific Ocean Post, or POP, and it was a really great environment to, if you wanted to roll your sleeves up and kind of help out in any way. I got that opportunity. I had great people I was working with, and then they merged with a French-Canadian company called Buzz Effects, and that, I think, for me was like really an incredible game changer, incredible opportunity. That was run by a husband and wife couple, Deke and Cheryl Bainham, who are amazing. And I'm super grateful to them because they just taught me everything. Cheryl, I think, spoke like 9 languages fluently. Deke was and he is an incredible 3D matte painter. And they had this really small, eclectic team of family, and I got to learn so much from them. And I think it was Cheryl was a really important influence on me, because at that time there was still this connotation, this belief that women in positions of power would hold other women down. And I got to see in real time that is not true. And it just started to pull threads at all of these other myths I was told about why there were not that many women in the film industry. And I don't think I realized that at the time. But since then, looking back on what an incredible influence she was on me, and is still, I still am in touch with her, and she's amazing.
Do you think you came in with some of those same ideas about women holding other women back?
I don't know if I came in with that idea, but I definitely thought, there's something about me that wants me to go into this industry, and other women don't want these jobs. I didn't recognize necessarily that there were barriers to entry for those people. And so I sort of believed that myth that this was something I wanted, but nobody else did, which is actually ridiculous. But at the time I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's true. I guess that's why I'm in a room full of all men. And now I realize that it's systemic.
I think in media there's been more openings, but in anything that's more on the tech side, like VFX, I assume is the same as gaming. Yeah. There's just a lot of resistance to women coming in.
There's resistance, and then you have to be okay being the only one like you in the room. And I think maybe because I was used to that for lots of other reasons, it didn't bother me. But in reality, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, and it still is that way, I would say, overwhelmingly in animation. Even though the pipeline is getting better, I think we know that there's a big gap in the middle career where women opt out because they don't necessarily see pathways forward. And partially that's because animated films take so long, so it's going to take longer for us to see that change. But partially and mostly it's because of the systemic nature of the business that is not inclusive enough.
Do you think that having that early exposure to European environments and French Canadian people was... Because I think in America, the patriarchy is very strong.
I mean, I think maybe that might have been why they had that insight. I mean, I was still very young. I was 21. I mean, in hindsight, I don't think Cheryl and Deke are that much older than me. They seemed so much more mature at the time. But I think it was also seeing a husband and wife team that were very equal. I mean, nobody at that time, I think, had children. But... you saw this is possible to do this without working this constant grind.
And in VFX, that grind has been basically terminal for for so many companies in the industry, and the ones that have undercut each other. And they never had a guild or
I think the
union.
Business of visual effects, which I think is quite similar to what I'm seeing with the business of animation, is... you have these folks at the top. I mean, it's a sweeping generalization, but that, want the job so badly that they don't necessarily understand the cost of taking that job. And so a lot of what we did at that company was 911 calls, companies that had shots that they could no longer do, or they were overwhelmed. And so we would come in and take the overflow of that, or take on things that other companies had messed up. And, and you're... And that is not necessarily because of incompetence of the other company. The industry was changing so fast. It was now we can do particles better than we could 6 months ago. Oh, now we can do lava better than we could 6 months ago. But because people weren't okay, let's really think about this. People would take things that they couldn't do, and then, it would be at double the cost, right? End up costing more to do the effects, and certainly more than they were making out of it. And so, the math doesn't
math doesn't math. And that culminated in that, what was that year when they were kind of protesting outside the Oscars and Rhythm and Hughes had gone bust?
Yeah.
And got an Oscar and went bust. It was so sad.
Well, and I think... I can't remember his name, but he's the Life of Pi director, was sort of saying how visual effects artists are not super necessary.
Yeah, that was the movie.
You were that
was the movie that sank them.
Yeah, and you were your whole movie was visual effects. Your whole movie. So, so I think that is always sort of the strange place of the big budget Hollywood world, which is you often get budgets are these massive amounts of money that small countries run on this continent, and yet it doesn't seem to be distributed in a way that makes a ton of sense to align for sustainability.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the fact that you worked on Titanic along with other titles. There's some tragic metaphors in these films.
Yeah,
about sinking ships and taking things down with them.
Yeah.
But was that overall a good experience?
I mean, I think at that point we were also geographically really desirable. We were a few blocks away from Digital Domain. Okay. So it was able to I think that's the big thing is when you could pull down some of these barriers and have cross communication. It was exciting. That was an exciting movie to work on because that was the beginning of a new wave of effects heavy big budget features that were not part of the Star Wars universe.
And pushed the frontiers of VFX, didn't they?
Yeah. So it was a fun, crazy time, and I would have stayed there forever, but I had this image of that I wanted to get back to Northern California, and so at that time Pixar was hiring for what would become Monsters Inc. And no one really knew that much about Pixar at that time. I mean, Toy Story had come out, and A Bug's Life was just coming out when I got hired, so it seemed like a big risk, and my family, who didn't really understand at all for the life of me what I did, just were really worried because they were used to being like, oh, I saw a movie poster for the movie you're working on, and now I don't hear anything about what you're working on. Like, you've been there for like 2 years. Are you really working on anything?
Yeah, I can relate.
yeah, totally. So
things move very slowly in animation.
Yes. So that was a big shock for me, because I think when you come from a small visual effects house, sometimes you're working on things that everybody in the world sees, like Titanic, and then a lot of time you're working on Super Bowl commercials or commercials, and that's really how you stay in business, is those things for 30 seconds pay a ton of money. And the beauty of that is, like, you could work on something that you hate, but it comes and goes pretty quickly.
So Pixar must have been a big change, because they kind of took the opposite attitude, like, let's focus on long form content, let's spend like 2 years on the story and get it like really, really right, and make something magnificent every time.
Pixar was a change in every way, shape, and form. It was a much bigger studio. Yes, there was seemed to be endless supply of money to work on things in the design world. It was very interesting. We coming from POP, where we really had to think about how to find creative solutions, and that was the beauty of like understanding and learning about 3D matte painting, which was incredible to see these people who could paint in three dimensions, which now I think is a lot more common. But we worked with some other more traditional matte painters, like Rocco Giaffri, who was there, who was incredible, who did a lot of the Star Wars matte painting. So there's just a lot of planning, right, in the visual, like let's figure out what we really, really need, because if you are working on matte painting and you move the camera, it doesn't work. And so at Pixar was like, we want to be able to see everything. Let's see what's underneath the table. Let's design inside the cupboard because we don't know if we're going to open it. And it was definitely an interesting time to be there, because it was sort of still very much the time period of original IP, which is kind of a phrase I don't really like new stories, instead of sequels. And again, just a very young company, a lot of like vibrancy to it, and a lot of like, let's make the impossible possible. And being there during that time felt confusingly magical, where I'm like,
confusingly magical,
because you'd be designing characters in the art department and I'm like, we can't make that yet, the technology doesn't exist. And they were like, no, it will. And I'm like, oh.
So you were story coordinator at that stage?
So yeah, I was the story coordinator and script supervisor for Monsters Inc. So yeah, I was brought in.
Which is where you met Nate?
Yes, where I met my partner, Nate Stanton. And then ended up, when the story manager got promoted on Monsters, running the story department and the script department, which was just the writers and me. And then from there, I was the art and story manager on The Incredibles, and then the same on WALL-E.
Yeah, amazing. And so when you started there, was Steve Jobs still there?
Yeah, he was there. I mean, he was there until he passed away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was definitely in the room with him quite a bit.
How would you describe his leadership style?
I mean, again,
is it everything it's hyped up to be?
Well, I would have to say that I had no idea what it was hyped up to be, because I didn't actually know who he was.
It's a bit of backward myth making.
Yeah, I mean, I remember calling my roommate when I first worked there, and because I had met Steve that day, like the company was small enough that like he would introduce you to the company when you started. And she was like, was he in a black turtleneck? And I was like, oh my God, how did you know that? Like, I didn't know anything about his myth. I didn't know who he was. I was 23 when I started at Pixar. So I think now I recognize, especially what we're seeing with so many sort of tech billionaires, I think not really building anything and only sort of destroying things, like how lucky we were to have someone like Steve Jobs with a vision. I mean, Nate and I talk about it a lot, like what a gift he was, because he would come in and let the creatives be creative while he was focusing on the business side of it and really building like the incredible campus in Emeryville, because before that we were in this like very beige hidden office park in Point Richmond next to an oil refinery, where we were evacuated on several occasions
because of
the oil refinery.
Oh wow, hilarious.
Yeah, so in retrospect, I don't think you would ever have one of the folks who are, these sort of tech autocrats would not come in and just allow people to do what they did best while they focused on what they do best. But yes, now you look back and I'm like, what an amazing gift.
I think what you were saying earlier about how you'd go to the tech department, they'd say like, well, we will build this thing that you can write about. That sounds like, from what I understand about him, how he would operate.
Yeah.
Like at Apple, he would put the marketing department back to back with the developers, so that the marketers would start coming up with what if ideas, and the developers would say, well, we can't do that. And they'd be like, yeah, but you'll figure it out. Yeah. We'll just start marketing in the meantime.
That seems that resonates with me for sure. Yeah, that tracks. Yeah. There were definitely times, especially in early days of Monsters, Inc., when Sully had all of this fur. And I had just come from visual effects. I know how difficult it was to interact.
Yeah, his fur was a big deal. I wasn't even in the industry yet, and I remember people talking about Sully's
and I
fur.
just was like, guys, can we do this? Like, and John Lasseter or Pete Docter, I don't know who it was like, well, we'll figure it out. We were never hampered by reality.
Wow.
Like, they were like, now go figure it out.
Wow. So. I guess sometimes those limitations can be a blessing, because as a story person, a few limitations help you like just channel your thoughts. But
yeah,
Blue Sky must also have been like amazing to just say like, spend the money, we'll find a way.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's also what's problematic about the industry now, which is like these huge budgets make it really impossible for most people to break into the animation industry as a storyteller or a creator, and they're not realistic. I do think necessity is the mother of invention, and so maybe some more barriers and maybe some more sandbox walls aren't the worst thing in the world to have.
Yeah.
Also, at the same time, technology has made such insane enhancements that we can even dream bigger. So it's an interesting time.
I'd love to come back to that in a little bit, just to talk about like where we are now with the limitations and the possibilities. But just to stick with Pixar for a moment, so how many women were there at that time? And was this an environment in which you started like feeling like you should be a champion for women, which is such a sort of hallmark of your career?
There were not many. In the story department, when I was there were no female storyboard artists. There was no female directors. There's
still only been 2, right?
Yeah, at Pixar, yeah. And 5 in the American industry.
Wow, that's so sad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't believe that any of the leads at that time were women. I think I still believed that story, that it was that other women don't want these jobs, that they're not interested in them. I now know that is a fabrication. And so I don't know that I necessarily saw it as super problematic as much as I would have loved to say. Like at 23, 24, I was like so aware of the issue. It was really only as my career continued to take off. And I did really struggle at Pixar with the length of time everything took. I really did like working in the effects industry, where you could be working on 5 or 6 things. I think I probably have some undiagnosed ADD. This idea of these really Pixar animated films are an ultra marathon, which I think for some people was great, but for me it was not.
That's probably a barrier in itself, because if it's going to take 5 or 6 years to make a movie, the chances of you having a child in that time is like exponentially higher than it would be to
or doing anything else.
To do anything.
Yeah, so I think
you can't really commit in the same way that a man can commit. And
you're also going to be doing the same job, right? So I had come from an environment where I was encouraged to try things out and work on different things. I wasn't an effects artist, but I was on the weekends, they were like, learn how to do effects. We'll help you do effects. If you want to work on this, you want to sit in on this big meeting, we want you to be there. If you do something, right? It wasn't like you can just take up space, it was, and then to be like, this is your job and you're going to be doing it for half a decade. And And that also meant like a lack of upward mobility and a lack of really kind of figuring out what you wanted for your future, because this was the plan for Pixar. And at that time, there was also big gaps between movies coming out. They weren't releasing movies the way they are now. And then when I looked up the food chain, you know, there weren't many women working above me that had sort of parallel lives. There just wasn't a lot of role models.
Right. That was one of my questions. Who were your role models and heroes?
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely had some amazing bosses. I worked with Darla Anderson, the incredible producer, for many years. And she was incredible and tough in the right way. And I think so much of what I learned from her, I take all the time, with me all the time. I mean, she was such an ultimate problem solver.
Do you have any like nuggets that are shareable, like from Darla?
It was just watching her at work and how quickly she could solve problems or pivot. I think what I really learned from Darla was like prepare for the worst, hope for the best, right? Like she was pretty unflappable, and also like she seemed already prepared for it. And so I think that was also the way I was raised at home, was like prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So I that aligned very, very well with me. So, but I didn't see that many folks that looked like me. So, when we adopted our daughter, and I was already like thinking about, I wanted to make a career change. It just also didn't work. My husband and I both worked at Pixar. That felt very tenuous. Like, what happens if something happens to the company? We're both in the same place. I wanted to have more diversification in like what our careers were doing. And I'd worked on 2 pretty tough films where I worked a ton, The Incredibles and then the beginning of WALL-E. I left in the middle of WALL-E when Lotus was adopted. So I left and went to grad school. I got my MBA. I wanted to do something completely different with my career at that time. And because I can't stand being bored, I had a 2.5-year-old while getting my master's in business. And so, I mean, I think that is like
the ADD.
the story of like, so I left Pixar, I got my MBA, I had our son, I started a business, and I left and I was working on WALL-E, and I went back for lunch at one point, and they were still working on WALL-E, and they were like, what have you been up to? And I'm like, what have you been up to?
But all those films came out and they were all amazing. So I suppose while you're there, it can feel like you've been trapped in some kind of Groundhog Day.
And I think it doesn't, because you're in this silo, right? And so it's very busy and you've got all this stuff going on, and then you like kind of come out from underground and you're like, oh, the world has continued on. You can be free from the the slog of ultra marathon animation.
Which was the least onerous one to work on, or which was your favorite?
They all have good times and bad times. You know, I think Monsters Inc. was super exciting because working with it was the first, and working with Pete Docter and Darla was an incredible opportunity, and we had these 2 incredible writers, the late great Dan Gerson and Rob Baird, and so I mean it was like a really wonderful team. I mean, I know it was really hard when we were doing it. I was traveling for all the recording sessions, so that could be very exhausting. People think that is great. It's hard and not fun. And then The Incredibles was Brad Bird, who was a complete outsider from Pixar, and he brought his own team with him, which were like this ragtag band of rebels, and to try to like work within the way that they work was hard in its own way, but it was like a really fun movie to work on, and super proud of the outcome of it. And then WALL-E was its own struggles in the early days. I think that one was the hardest for me to work on because we had a lot of personal tragedy at the time. It was family, and that was when Joe Ranft, who was kind of the heart and soul of Pixar, died in a car accident. I lost my own mom during that time. We adopted our daughter. So it was just the highs and lows of life. But both The Incredibles and WALL-E, I had the amazing opportunity to be partnered with Ralph Eggleston, who is an Academy Award-winning production designer. And Ralph and I had just an amazing working relationship, and he passed away a couple of years ago, which was heartbreaking. So there are pros and cons to all of them. I can't really watch any of them and know if they're good or not good.
Oh, they're good.
Yeah. We just saw Monsters, Inc. for like a school fundraiser for my kids' school, and I was like, oh, that's a cute film.
I've heard Pete Docter's style described as like very dialectical and can be frustrating in that sense of like, it's this today and then in a few weeks it's that, and then
I think Pete, I would never call Pete frustrating. I mean, it's been years since I've worked with Pete. He's the kindest person, but I think he really excavates his story.
Okay.
And
in layers.
in many layers. And then Brad has like a vision, and he wants that vision presented, and so that could feel very straightforward, but I think for some people felt like less. I mean, it's certainly not collaborative. It's like he is the director, and then it didn't work that much with Andrew because mostly I work with Ralph, and then Ralph was his own human. There's nobody else, as far as I can tell, like Ralph Eggleston, and so you either liked it or you didn't, and I did.
And you liked it?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So then from there, moving on to kind of the next phase of your career where you were kind of sick of these extremely long timelines, and you founded into 2012 Camp Real Stories, which gave a chance for you to express yourself as a teacher and pass on some of this knowledge. Do you want to maybe talk a bit about that?
Yeah.
It sounded like it was very successful from the word go, which must have been very gratifying.
It is still. I mean, so I mean, Real Stories really came out of two things. When I was getting my MBA, I wanted to pivot entirely and do something in the social sustainability space, and I was going to school with all of these folks that were really working in the environmental sustainable business space, and they were coming up with really great ideas on how to combine business and our environmental crises that we're facing, and they could not tell a story to save their lives. They would meander on and on and on and like double down on the data and really sort of doom and gloom or preach to the converted. And so while I was there, I formed this like mini little consulting company. We're trying to help them become storytellers. And that really sort of reinvigorated my original belief that like we need good stories to amplify great change. And this all came about because of our daughter, because we would be out and about and people would come up to me and be like, oh my God, she looks just like Dora. And I was like, the Explorer? She's not an animated character. And I didn't really understand why this was happening, why this was like happening all the time.
Oh, wow.
She is Latina. She was born in Guatemala. But it felt very strange. And why this was happening was because at that time in 2006, 2007, the only representation of a Latina girl in the United States in the media was Dora the Explorer. Wow. 27% of the population. Wow. And I was like, and Dora's cool. Like, she's got a magical backpack. She's got a talking monkey. Like,
she's female.
She's female. Like, I don't have any problem with Dora. I have a problem that, like, this huge segment of our society was being diminished down to a singular character, cartoon character on television, and that we should have a rich mirror of society in our media. And I already knew that was not happening. I had been involved in women in animation. I'd been involved in women in film in Los Angeles. I had worked in like different capacities around figuring out ways to bring more women into the industry. They never seemed like they were really wanted successful solutions. It felt more like, oh, we've checked that box. And so I talked to a lot of the women I knew that were successful in the industry. I was like, what do you think the barriers to entry are? Like, why do we think this is happening? And at that time, Gina Davis had started the Gina Davis Institute, where she and her team were issuing these reports about what was happening in the industry, but no one was really talking about the cultural connotation of the lack of diversity in the industry. We were definitely hearing about women in tech. Mm-hmm. And so what I was able to piece together, which we now know is fact, is a lack of representation behind the scenes has a direct effect to the representation on the screen.
Yeah.
And when you're in rooms like I was, where all of these like really brilliant men who have a very limited worldview are making decisions about films that are going to be seen by sometimes upwards of 1 billion people. They're not thinking about their storytelling choices that they're making that continue to replicate the same problems that we have in our society. So, but what I was told over and over again was like, well, women and girls can't work together, and you're not going to get any women who want to help you with this like idea of trying to change the industry.
Women and girls can't work together. Wow.
Yeah. And so I'd had this experience where I joined the board of this really great organization called Girls Rock Camp that was putting girls together in rock bands for a week during the summer, and they would learn how to play a musical instrument together, and they would have a performance at the end, and they would be in a band, and it was like very like great on like team building and empowerment. But the goal of that organization was not to change the rock industry, though it could, but that was like and so I was like, well, I want to see if we can do something similar about the film industry, but actually create change. And so I also had, because I studied microfinance when I was getting my MBA, and I really studied that industry, which had sort of taken the banking industry by storm, right? And it was like, if we give small loans out to women, there's a greater return on investment because they pay the loans back and then they uplift society. So I was like, and my connection to that was like hearing the founder of the microfinance world speak. I got to go to a small conference with him. Was like, I took everything that I had been told about the banking industry and I did the opposite. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to try that. So the Real Stories thing was supposed to be a hobby. I was going to do 1 week of summer camp a year and see if anyone showed up. Because like maybe I throw a party and nobody shows up, and like then these things that are told are proven right. And so that first summer in 2013, we had 30 girls that signed up, so high school age to like 16 to 19, maybe a couple younger, maybe a couple older. But so in a week, it was all word of mouth marketing. And the summer camp world is very big in the United States, but normally by the time you're 16, 17, 18, you stop going to summer camp because you either don't have to, it's a form of childcare in the U.S., and you don't have to, or you have a job or whatever. So the fact that we were able to like grab this swath of young people that wanted to do this, people were like, oh, that's a really hard demographic to attract. And then I had 60 professional women that asked to volunteer for that week.
So like two professionals per...
Yeah. It was an overkill, for sure. We had to make some change. And then through that curriculum...
And were they literally camping, or were they just staying in the...
It was just a day camp. So they would like come. It was held at Oakland School for the Arts, like this amazing premier public arts high school in Oakland. Home of, found of Zendaya came out of Oakland School for the Arts. Okay. Yeah, Kehlani came out of Oakland School of the Arts. Like and luckily, by sheer luck, like I had this idea and I had zero education background, right? So, I mean, other than my parents being educators, but
that's not nothing.
I know, but and so I was walking through OSA. They had offered me the space for free to try it out because they were interested. And they introduced me to the media teacher, the wonderful Heidi Craig Cabra. And she was like, I've been wanting to do this. Can I help you write the curriculum? And I was like, sure, because I didn't have any idea about curriculum. I was like, we'll just put them together and we'll see what happens. So Heidi and I worked together to put that first year of curriculum together. And there are all these systemic issues that we were deconstructing during the course of that week. But then there were some, personal issues, which is like the women, the filmmakers that I knew, the directors, the cinematographers, the editors that I knew said one of the things that held them back was often they were afraid to show their work before it was perfect, right? So we have, as women, have a perfection need, which I would argue is because of society. But
I think there's various, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I think about this a lot, because I think there is some stuff that we can blame on patriarchy, and other things is sort of inherent to us. I literally think one of the reasons men take more risks is because of testosterone.
I mean, also
I think they're more willing to say like, it'll work. Fake it till you make it,
Sure, possibly, but also their risks aren't nearly as risky as ours, right? So like if men say something like they pitch their idea that people are like, that's dumb, and but you'll often have 5 guys that pile on to help you make it better. If we are in a room and someone says that's dumb, the response is, well, that's because women can't do it.
Wow. Yeah.
Or worse, now you are threatened with like murder. And then if you are the only person in the room, you don't necessarily have anyone to back you up. I mean, I worked with amazing men. I'm not to say that doesn't exist. But they don't necessarily see what I'm seeing. Yeah. And
they will dismiss you. They'll be like very quick to dismiss.
Yeah.
To dismiss like at the first sign of weakness.
And like the amount of like times I've seen hysterical men. I mean, I've been in rooms with men throwing things. I've been in rooms with men crying. I've been in rooms with men yelling and turning purple, and they're never called emotional or hysterical. I've literally been with a woman who just raises her voice to be heard, and I was like, oh, she's yelling. And I'm like, there was no yelling. We should show him what yelling looks like, because I can be happy to display the difference between that, Wow. So I think that's a line that we all have to like razor line, that we as women, and it takes up so much psychic space that we're always on this line teetering, whether or not we even recognize it. And so I agree that part of it is just like, I mean, I have a 17-year-old son now, and there's a lot of gravitas there. There's so much more gravitas than I had when my daughter was 17, 18.
How do you mean gravitas?
Like, he's a brilliant storyteller. Just ask him. So, there's a confidence there when I'm like, oh, yeah, I see, and so there's an element of that.
Storytelling almost above other things, because there's just something about women that gets us interrupted. I do sympathize with someone like Elizabeth Holmes, the con person, who sank her voice an octave in order to be heard. And of course it's like part of a persona, but like, what are you supposed to do if you can't get through 2 sentences without being interrupted? Like you sometimes do want to scream.
I mean, I would say you build another room. I mean, I primarily work with women now.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I mean, it was interesting to hear you say it now and in another interview with you that I listened to about like the girls coming in with the supposition that women can't work together. Because I would never have put it that way to myself. But there is something about young men, the way they'll throw their lot in with each other on a project. And I don't think we as women are good at fostering that culture. If we work together on something, it must be in service of some community. It's like, it must be for the benefit. We're not allowed to just go, I've thought of something cool that I want to do. It might work and it might not, but like, will you guys just come and like give your time and your skills for my little pipe dream? Yeah. We don't do that as women.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's harder to ask people for help as women.
Which is weird, because we're supposed to be the collaborative ones, or the...
I think what you said it's like often if it's in service of something else. I'm 52 now, so I see a different part. I mean, and I work mostly with people who are over 50, and there is like a really beautiful selfishness that's happening in this age. Like, I want to get this thing done, and like, do you want to work on it with me? And the service is the same way any film is going to service the world. So I think that might come with age, and it would be nice if it could come earlier.
Well, maybe the zeitgeist is also catching up.
It's possible. I think we don't have the beauty of like our psychic space being cleared to just work on something, right? I mean, my day is interrupted 400 times with stuff that my kids who are young adults need. The other parts of running a business that need to stay on track. And
if you got ADD, you're interrupting yourself as well.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting conundrum, and it's hard to find your partners. And I think that was one of the big things that we did at Real Stories that I'm the most proud of. I mean, there's a couple of things that we did that I'm super proud of. First of all, I'm super proud of all of these young women that and young people, because we also had non-binary folks in there who came into the program and allowed themselves to be vulnerable and work on things together. But there was a few things that we established early on, which was that this was not a summer camp for making friends. What I've also learned is like my friends, my close friends, are not people I would work with or probably would want to work with me. And there are people I will work with that I will go to the ends of the earth to work with, but I probably won't like go to a dinner party with them. Like those can be very, very valuable roles in your life, and they can hold very different places.
That's interesting, because I think that's something also that comes more naturally to men, because their relationships are often based around activities. You know, there's the thing about men will face forward while they're socializing. Women will face each other. Men will like face the TV, the game, or the lake where they're fishing. Yeah. So I think the culture there once again is it's like I have to like you on every level if I hang out with you.
Right. Yeah. So we would just set that intention in the beginning. Like if you walk out of here with a friend, great. I don't really care. But if you walk out of here with 5 people that you want to work on something with in the future, that's what we care about.
That's so powerful.
So then we were bringing kids, young people, not kids because they were not baby goats, young people in their like late teens, early 20s from very different backgrounds, from very different worldviews, and they were just put together on teams based off of like the genre of films they wanted to make, and they had to figure out how to work it out. If there was a conflict, I was like, work it out. We're not going to handhold you through this workout. We're not going to remove you. Once you become a group, you cannot break up. So work it out. Not everybody loved that. We definitely had some parents that wanted their children to be in a sort of more of a pristine environment, and we couldn't offer that. And then the big thing is that we wanted them to have half-finished films that they would show at the end of the week so that they would understand they can show things that aren't in perfect condition and no one would die. Like the stakes were really low. Unfortunately, we failed at that miserably because they all finished their films and they were amazing. And so we had to scramble to put on that first year, a big film festival. We got a movie theater donated to us. We had about 300 people from the community show up. The young people would stand up there, introduce their films, answer questions from the audience. We ended up really working on not only creative undertakings, group projects, but also public speaking and all of these other aspects of which I think are really important. Pitching.
Yeah, it's magical that it all came together in its first year.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then every year it doubled in size. And so the next year was 2 programs. Then we started doing adult women's weekends, and we'd get feedback from our returning folks every year of like where their problems were in continuing this education beyond the scope of the summer program. And so a lot of them were in college in the United States. Even if you were getting into a top tier film school, generally your first 2 years are general ed. So you get your sort of general classes out of the way, which means you're not working on films. And so a lot of what we consider pre-professionals at that point were really frustrated because by the time they got into film programs, their skills had waned. These young men often had already found their groups to work with, so they were trying to break into these college film teams. And so during the summer we formed something called the Institute, which was our professional level program where they were working with professional actors. We worked at sound stages in the Bay Area.
Same girls who went through.
Yeah, but now we're like in their 20s. And those films got into film festivals all over the country. Some of them got into international. So they had these incredible calling cards that they were able to do. Most of those young people are now working in the film industry. We asked anybody who volunteered with us to make themselves available throughout the year for like occasional mentoring sessions. We taught everyone what mentoring meant. This was also a really big thing. Like a mentor is not your therapist. A mentor is not someone that you demand respond to you at all hours of the day or night. We wanted that relationship to be mutually beneficial for both the mentor and the mentee. And I think that's when was really important for people to understand, like, if you have a professional question, this is what you need to, I want to find out more about cinematography. Could I have a 15-minute informational interview with you? So you make it manageable for the mentor as well.
Yeah, defining the scope is a good tip.
Yeah, because that could be tricky. It's tricky now. I work with college students currently at SCAD, and actually they're all pretty amazing. But every once in a while, it's like, okay, this is beyond the scope of what we had talked about that we would be engaging you with.
So one of the other interesting things that I would never have guessed through your experience with these girls was that some of them felt their mentors would hold them back.
I don't necessarily know that the girls came in. These were the things I had been told, and my own, and like my sort of, research that I did with, like with every person I talked about before I started Real Stories was like my core group. And then I'd ask them to introduce me to 2 people in their core group of filmmakers, just to like for 15 minutes. I want to start this program. Cool. I need 15 minutes of your time to be like, what do you think some of the things that helped make you successful? What are some of the things that felt like you were barriers to like your success or barriers to your goals? And through that is what Heidi and I worked on to like create a curriculum around that to sort of come up with like the over, under, around theories, like how do we get around these barriers? And so a lot of that was this idea of like, if there's another, which I think is like completely played out in our media, like it's reflected in our media, is like sort of the boss bitch trope, right? Like you have a woman in a position of power in the movies and she's like talking badly to her female assistant, or it's the Devil Wears Prada. It's the Any Given Sunday. It's
like that Megyn Kelly film recently. It was the beautiful Charlize Theron.
Wonderful Charlize Theron.
Was it like inherited from media? Is it like we must expect?
But I do think there is an element of that. I think there was a lot of women who worked really, really hard in any industry and in Hollywood in particular to get to where they were, and then their elbows were out.
Right.
And instead of opening their arms, and instead of actually understanding that like you don't really have any power if you're the only one in the room, and seeing that as a benefit to like really bring other women or any marginalized person into the room with you allows more diversity. I mean, I remember being at a Pixar like meeting after we'd have a screening, and it was the note session. It was all the men around the table figuring out their brilliant ideas to make the movie, and like the vice president of the company at that time, or maybe she was president. I don't actually know her. But she was the top female at the company. Got up and started taking cookies around, and I was like that could be my future, and I don't want that future. So, and I don't think she meant anything by it. Certainly not an elbows out moment. Like she was just trying to be helpful, but it felt very like I was like, oh, that's not. That made me uncomfortable, right? It made me as a young woman in the room looking at that to say, you're still in sort of a subservient position, even though I think she was probably like, everyone must be hungry and I'll just give them.
Yeah. I mean, it's how we're raised. And
yeah, I mean, that wasn't how I was raised, but I've never walked around giving people cookies, but I was, raised by a former non-feminist mother, but, so I think so that's not an example of elbows out, but I've definitely been in rooms where women are like, I got here, I worked hard, I went through the muck to get here. And I get it. Like that muck is mucky. And they are like, you're not going to take my place.
Yeah.
Versus I'm here and let's make more places.
Yes.
I guess so.
There is
I have empathy for that response. And when I have found myself sometimes, I'm a prickly human being. So like when I found myself being extra prickly and I take a moment to like do the opposite, like be extra open, move the door, get the door out of the way. It's always been a benefit to like, instead of holding someone back, like doing the opposite. So whether it's been the media, whether it's been a person's individual experience, I understand it, but it's not necessary.
Do you think that it's becoming less necessary? I mean, there are a whole lot more female graduates now. Not that any of them are going to get jobs in the current economy, but there's presumably a lot more women in the industry as well. It's kind of climbing up towards 50-50, at least in some departments, right?
No, it is not.
Nowhere.
It is not. And it has gotten worse after, and this is not to blame anything, but it has gotten worse after the Me Too movement. And it is definitely.
I was going to ask, what do you feel the backlash?
I mean, look, there are deeply disturbing men in positions of power, and they did not look at this moment where these other men were called out and said, oh, I need to change my behavior. They turned it to, not me. I think that there are some element. I mean, this is just empirical data. You can go to the USC Annenberg Institute. They issue these amazing reports about the state of the entertainment and gaming industry every year. And some elements have gotten better. And certainly the film school graduates and the animation school graduates, I mean, it's a totally different world. I mean, when my husband went to CalArts, he identifies like the 2 women that were, part of his department, Jill Colton and Brenda Chapman. I mean, I think they're both younger than him, so maybe they weren't part of his department. But
but like in the school. It was a very small school. And, I'm working now with an animation school in the United States, in Savannah College of Art and Design. And almost all of the classes when I walk in there are super diverse. So many, I don't know the exact numbers, but they look pretty gender equitable. And it's amazing. But what we are not seeing is that change that is throughout the entire industry.
So there was some kind of legal action at a stage to try and redress this, right?
I think initially, yes, like there was a whole diversity, equity, inclusion movement, which was fantastic, but not baked in enough. So when it no longer serves companies, it's not part of their revenue stream, then they're going to find ways to get rid of it. It's like our current government is going after companies that have DEI, J policies, which is horrific.
Yeah. There's a lot we could say about that. I'd love to talk a little bit about your time since you've moved here and what it's been like for you, and what you're focusing on now. You've started Nell Productions, your own company, and doing a lot more writing. It's still teaching.
Yes. Yeah. So, we have moved here about 5 years ago. And during the end of my time at Real Stories, I was just so inspired by so many of our filmmakers that were coming through the program and developing their own work. And I was jealous. So this became a great opportunity while we were here to start developing our own projects with our production company, along with other people's projects, helping them with their story structure and their story development and all of their pre-production. So, we're still in the early days, but we have a feature in development that Nate and I came up with the story for, and I co-wrote the script with my partner Kia Simon, and so we're hoping that will start in earnest in development in the beginning of 2027. Getting funding is a challenging aspect of this particular moment, but we have a shopping agreement and we have an incredible new producer on board, so we're really excited about that. And then I work with Savannah College of Art and Design. My daughter now attends the SCAD, not in the animation or film department, as she would like it very well known. But while I was there visiting her, I reached out to the animation department to see if there's ways that we could collaborate, and that's been fantastic. It's really filled my heart with working with 20-somethings again. They are the best, and the SCAD is producing some really great students. So we'd run 2 internship programs, very similar to the Real Stories model, all remote, which is great and also challenging to give these folks assignments to work on. They're helping us with some solve some story problems that we're having, and then we do professional development workshops with them each week, bringing in different people to get some hands-on training with them, from concept designers to storyboard artists to directors. So it's been a really fun process. We start the second cohort next week.
Amazing.
So that's been it's great. It's hard. This is a smaller industry in South Africa, and it's a super creative industry. So it's been fun to kind of get to know the players here and see where I could be of use with my skill set.
And your seemingly boundless reserves of energy for fixing problems.
I do really like to fix problems. It's my favorite thing. I think that is the tie back to my childhood. I learned very early on how to create order out of chaos, and that is just what this industry is. And everybody says that they know the one way to do things, but that's not true. There's not one way to do things. There's a million ways to do things, and I think that's the beauty of cross generations as well. Is we have on my film Petunia, we have a very top tier team of all women in their 50s who have this wealth of experience, or 50s plus, and then we're bringing in these young people who have a different way of working and learning from them as well, and finding our own ways to create our own pipeline. We're also working across time zones and using that to our advantage. So that's been really great, especially with external clients, because they think we are so fast, and we are super fast, but also when you're half of your team is in California and half of it is in South Africa.
No downtime.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, we just hand things off and it turns around. So I'm learning, how to communicate across different skill sets and cultures and languages sometimes has been really great.
How do you talk to students at the moment about like the industry they're entering? Because it's changing so rapidly. And in a way, it can seem quite bleak. I mean, I think with AI in our industry, there's a big opportunity to just bring down the barrier to entry, and possibly the enormous price points of making an animated film. But it's also like if you're not the filmmaker, if you're someone who plugs into a film, it also might take your job.
I feel more and more strongly on a day-to-day basis that AI is not to be feared. I just met an amazing woman who has a software animation company, brilliant woman in Portugal, and she really explained to me why AI it's just a disruptor from the industry, but in a very negative way. It can't iterate, right? So it cannot be ever used creatively, and it most likely will never have those skill sets just by the nature of how it's been set up. So I think AI is the excuse for capitalism. Animated films are expensive to make. They take a really long time, and so people don't want to pay for them, and they're like, we'll just wait for AI to come in and make it for us. But I'm already seeing like tech companies are dumping all of this money into AI, and it's not working out.
Yeah, it happened with Disney quite recently.
Yeah, so I think what I'm seeing with the young folks that we're working with, which is like teaching them, I mean, one of my favorite classes I taught with SCAD and what I'm hoping to teach at other places is a creative entrepreneurship class, because I think even if you end up going to work for a studio, the years, like, my husband spent almost 25 years at Pixar. There's a lot of people I know there who had their whole entire, that's the only place they've ever worked, which is certainly not something I would want and not something I think is a benefit anymore. So I'm like, how do you look at whatever job you take as being your own entrepreneur? Like, what are you going to get out of it? Certainly the company needs you to get something out of it. And so figuring out how to make those relationships mutual, I think everyone needs to think more agilely about how they're going to enter the industry, whether that means you're going to be like sort of a generalist or a specialist. And if you're going to be a specialist, like not just because you enjoyed doing this thing at school, really do some research into the industry and be like, is there a future for this? Like, if you are a really, really good rigger, that might be a job that's not necessary in the future. I don't know that to be true. I'm not making some prediction that AI can do something around rigor, but I'm just like picking something that like some people get into. And right now there's a worldwide shortage of people who can rig. So like if that's what you want to do, that's great, but keep your own awareness of what's going on in the industry and keep your own skills up. Even with some of the interns we've been working with, we've got interns who really understand how to take feedback and understand how to get what we need out of them. And then there are others that have a very, very distinctive point of view, and that's kind of the only way they can work. So I'm like, so you are not the right fit for us. So you have to figure out where you're going to, if you want to keep this distinctive style, distinctive point of view, either you better be developing something that you can pitch, or you have to find that match. But you're not going to be for everyone. That's not necessarily to say that you don't have a future, but expecting the industry to change for you is not gonna happen, right? Like it's just not. And so, and especially expecting folks who have a certain amount of experience and expertise in the industry, like there's elements I can learn from you, but really it's the other way around at this point in time. So, for me, that's the thing. It's like I've built my own sandbox. It works better for me if I'm in charge, and you are welcome. And I will make it a really enjoyable sandbox, but I'm not interested in your sandbox.
Do you feel like it's a good idea to encourage students across the board to kind of, while they need to be able to plug into other people's sandboxes, to think of themselves as like originators, like you were saying, develop your own stuff? I just looked at the way things have happened in live action, and these two breakout hits, Backrooms and Obsession, from 20-something-year-old filmmakers.
And Iron Lung, which came out of Sundance,
Right, yeah. So I just feel like the entry points are more available to live action people, but there must soon be equivalents in animation because of these new tools.
Absolutely.
That's going to make it
so exciting.
You don't need $20 million. You need $4 million, which is a lot of money. But you need like $4 million to make Flow, for instance. And I think everybody's looking at a breakout hit like that and going, you can do something. You can bootstrap something indie that is like Oscar worthy.
I totally agree with you. It's very, very exciting time. I was talking to our producer last night, Romney Marino, and she had just gone to this producers conference in LA, and I'm going to slaughter what she said to me, but something just like the past used to be other content ruled, and now it's community rules, right? So it's like building that audience early, and getting people excited about your film, and then they kind of get to be part of the filmmaking process, whether by being like part of the donor Kickstarter world or some sort of level of interaction with your characters. It's very exciting. There are probably tools that are readily available or will be very soon readily available to make more short form community building storytelling tools that will get people engaged in your story. What it takes to build a community is a ton of strategy. So you don't want to launch that without then knowing when your film is going to be coming out so that you can, it takes a long time to build a family that's going to want to stay with your film all the way to like execution. I think that's what David did very well with Sunrise with the shorts, and then when the film came out, they had this built-in audience already. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. That's what I'm super passionate about. Is we cannot continue to offer $150, $200 million budget films where only like 5 or 6 people get the opportunity to make those. I don't want to watch them. I'm bored of them. I'm much more interested in things like Flow and things that you see at Annecy, where it's just a combination of artistry and storytelling, and wildly talented people doing them. Now, lots of people want to see the $150 million films. I'm not saying that industry will ever go away, but it's not as exciting.
Yeah.
To me.
So I think that's something that's nice about being here and the way South Africa can work with Europe, where there just is more funding for this. What would be a risky endeavor in the States, but where there's like a cushion of public money to be put towards these things. For the moment, we don't know how long that's going to last.
Yeah. I think that is, and I think that's the challenge that what I found with South African creatives, that is like they've been so used to kind of working in the way that works here and works with them. And I think you see a lot of people who are jack of all trades, so they can do a lot of things. And trying to get them to understand how to fit into an industry that already exists, whether those are storytelling structures that probably don't need to be broken down and gotten away with. We should probably stick with like storytelling structure the way it exists, unless you're really, really good at that. I know you and I have talked about that in the past. How to collaborate with folks, especially like if you're used to having total control over something. That's not how we work in anywhere, really. So understanding how to
definitely not an animation.
And collaborate. Those I think that's where like you'll start to see this shift in the ability. And I think you get that, like people like yourself and Dan who have had that opportunity to work in Europe, and you're already like innately thinking about that pipeline. I think trying to get some other people to like think about that as well. It's like, we're not asking you to do everything. I'm asking you to do the thing you're good at. Just do that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So seeing yourself as part of a larger machine.
Yeah.
And knowing how to plug in.
And respecting that larger machine.
Yeah.
Like the machine pays our bills. So we should, we may not like it, but if this isn't the most creative project I've ever worked on, then hopefully it'll pay you enough to work on the most creative. That was my big thing when I ran the art and story department at Pixar. It was like folks would really want their sort of creative spirit to be filled by Pixar. And I was like, no, this is a dictatorship. It's that dude, because it was always a dude's vision. Like, and ideally it's a benevolent dictatorship, but it's dictatorship. So if you need creative fulfillment, you need to go outside here. You need to go take a pottery class or go take your own, or work on your own stuff.
Well, there was the idea I came across somewhere, which I felt was so true, that like the workplace had taken the place of church.
Yeah.
Because it's like you going there to, as you say, to be filled with.
Yeah. And I think Pixar, I think this probably was the biggest influence. I don't know if it was Steve Jobs' influence, but I think we had more of like sort of those early tech company feels of like game rooms and a movie theater and like you could spend your whole life in there.
They wanted you to spend your whole life.
They wanted you to spend it's in there.
They were not fighting against you, believing it could fill you spiritually.
But in the end, it's a company, and they should do what they have their own things to fulfill. And in that case was shareholders, and you have your own creative vision that you want to fulfill. And both things can exist, but they can't exist in this space.
Yeah, it is one thing I'll say for Gen Z, but there's probably something to it, is that they don't want to work as hard because they've seen that they don't buy into the idea that you should work yourself to death for the sake of. They don't wrap their identity around their job to the extent that I think every previous generation has, which is it's hard for us to work with because we need that commitment to work. But at the same time, they're probably right.
Yeah, I mean, you have to find that balance, right? And so, and I'm always like, that's an individual decision, right? So if you want to work really hard in your 20s so that you maybe amass a certain amount of skills, you amass a certain amount of credits, so then you don't maybe necessarily have to work, like, great. If you're like, I'm just going to cruise, great. But you have to figure that out for yourself. And I think that is sometimes the hard part with young people, with the idea of like, oh, you're going to tell me what I'm supposed to do with my life. And no, you have to figure that out on your own.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about? Any nuggets that you'd like to share?
I do think it's a scary time right now, but I do think the horizon, it can be quite bright. I'm more hopeful than I've been in a while because I think we are a whole globe. And just because what's happening in the United States with that animation industry, which may or may not ever come back to the way it was, I think that there's so many other places that animation and film is happening, and to explore that. And there's so many different stories that still need to be told. I mean, I'm so excited about things like the success of K-pop Demon Hunters, Encanto, where you get culturally specific stories that resonate with a global audience. And I want more of that.
I think we're looking for our South African K-pop Demon Hunters, but it's basically the only continent that's having kids.
Very soon, a quarter of the population will be African. And so the idea that this continent has been basically ignored from a creative commerce point of view is no longer a really great business model.
Our moment has come.
So be prepared for it. Don't faff around.
You can find links to Esther's website and the Annenberg Institute in the show notes. I'm Julia Smuts Louw. Thanks so much for listening.